Hi guys, welcome back. So I'm really excited to announce a full stack Golang course where we'll be using React.js for frontend and Golang for backend. And we're building a simple to-do list, but it's not very simple because we're going to be using React and Golang together, right? So there's already a to-do list, Golang small mini series on my channel, but that has simple HTML. It doesn't have React. So here in this case, in this course, we're using React.js. All right. Now the color scheme and the CSS is not the best out here, and I agree. And I'm sure you're better at CSS than me because I'm not really good at CSS. So once we're done with this course, you can take this code and then you can change the CSS and use it for your own, as per your own taste. And so it's basically, let's say if you want to create a new to-do, right? Create React course. So you type it out here and then you can see it at the bottom of the list. It gets added. And then you have 3 buttons, done, undo, and delete. And all of these work. So if you click on done, it puts a cross line there. If you say undo, you can, it becomes a task again, which you can complete again. And you can delete the tasks as well, right? So it's going to be quite an interesting course. And we have both of our servers running here. So we have a separate server for React, separate server for Golang. And it's a completely full stack course and you'll really enjoy it. So now let me show you the project structure or the flow as in how we're going to build this entire. So the approach that we'll be following is this. So our backend file will have models and where we'll define the model for a to-do, and then we'll have our routers where we'll create our routes that the front end will call. And then we'll have, we'll have our route handling functions here, and then we'll have our middleware. The middleware will be responsible for connecting with the DB and then fetching all the to-dos from the database, creating inside the database, creating a new to-do inside the database, and completing a to-do, editing a to-do, and deleting a to-do. All of these things inside database, right? So all of those things will be handled by our middleware, and our front end will take care of just 2 files, to-do file, and there will be a test file, and that is it. So it's not going to be very complicated, but just because it has React and Golang, so some people might find it a little confusing or a little difficult. But if you already have an experience with Golang and React, you won't have any difficulty. So let's get started, and we'll work a little quickly so that we can complete this project in about 7 to 8 videos max. So I'm in a place on my computer where I usually keep my Golang code, and here I'm going to make a new directory, Golang React to-do. I'll cd into it, and we'll create 2 folders here. One is the server folder, so we'll say mkdir server, and inside the server folder we're going to go mod init github.com/akhil/Golang React to-do. So this is where we'll keep all our Golang files in the server folder, and in the we'll create a client folder now, but instead of just creating a folder, we'll actually create it as a create React app or CRA project. So we'll say create React app client. So it'll take a while. What I'll do is I'll pause this video and come back again so that I don't end up wasting your time. So the job has completed, and it has created a folder called client in my project folder. And the client folder, if you cd into it, you can see that it's a CRA, it's a create React app, all right? And then we'll open up, actually what I'll do is I'll go to the project directory, and here is where I'll open up my code editor, which is VS Code in my case. You could be using anything else, not a problem. So as you can see, I have 2 folders, the client and the server. Now the clients we want to use this app.js file in the client src, and so what I'll do is I'll just select all, remove it, and I'll import React from React, and I'll import app.css, and I'll import container from semantic UI React, and I'll have a to-do list component. So I'll import to-do list from to-do list. Perfect. So let's actually create that file, to list.js. The D needs to be small. The O with D needs to be small. Alright, so for the app.js file, we'll create a functional component. We'll say function app, and we'll return a div, and we'll close this div, and at the end put a semicolon here after return, and at the end, you know the standard drill, we have to export that component. So we'll say default app, right? And here in this div, we are going to say container, which we are getting from our semantic UI React, and inside that, all we have to do is render our to-do list component. So our to-do list file is the most important file, that means. And here what we'll do is we'll again do the standard stuff. We'll import react/component from React. We need to make some API calls, so we obviously need Axios. We'll make the API calls to our backend server, right? And I need a couple of things from my semantic UI React. So I'll say import and something 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 from semantic UI React. Semantic UI React. The things that I need are card, header, form. I need to submit the to-do list will be in the way of a form basically, and I need input and icons. And we'll define the endpoint for our backend server. In my case, it'll be HTTP localhost 9000. When you're running your Golang server, just run a netstart and TP command if you're on Ubuntu, and just check if the ports that you're going to start your server on, the backend server on, if it's free or it's being consumed by some other service. You need to make sure you need to kill all the tasks on that particular port before you start using it, otherwise the program won't work. So this is a very common issue, and a lot of people when they comment on my videos, it's mostly because the ports on their laptops are not free at that particular point of time. That's why the project does not work. All right, so we've defined our endpoint, and now we'll create a class-based component, to-do list extends component. We'll obviously have our constructor and props. Here we'll say super props, and we'll define our state. So we'll have this dot state. That's why we're using a class-based component, because we want to work with state. We'll have task and items. All right, so for now this is how we are defining our state. It was supposed to be a comma here. So this is our component, and then when our component loads, so we'll use component did mount. Usually you make API calls on component did mount, right? So we want to say get task, and get task is going to be an API driven function, in the sense we'll have to call our backend APIs in this function. So Just a second. Yeah, so this component mount is a function of this component, so it has to be inside. That's why it was giving us those squiggly lines here. So after making that fix, we can go ahead and start working on our so by at the end of this file, you want to export default to-do list, and here you want to have your render function. So we'll say render return, and at the end of the return you ideally want to have a semicolon, and while returning, inside return you'll have a div and this div will have class name is equal to row. We'll create a row here, and all we're doing here basically is creating a header, a h2 header, more specifically with color. I'm giving it a color of yellow. You can give it any other color. I'm not the best when it comes to selecting colors. All right, and all we're going to say here is to-do list. All right, and then we'll obviously return our task and all of those different things like buttons, create task, all of those things also we'll have here. In the first video, we saw the demo and the approach on how we'll build the project. The second video, we started creating our client and server folders. In the client folder, it was a React application, and then we worked on our app.js, and then we created this new component to-do list, and we was working on it. In this third video, we'll work mostly on the server side, but there are a couple of things that I want to do in the this React component. So we'll just do those basic things, and then we'll head over to our server side. All right, so here I just need to create a form which has the ability to submit something, right? So just the basic structure. I want to just get it on. So here I'll say div class name is equal to row, and obviously it'll have a closing div as well later on. And here I want to have a form that will again have a closing form tag. The form will have on submit property this dot on submit, and here you'll have an input element, and on a separate line I'll write type is equal to text, name is equal to task on change this dot on change, and then you will have a value property. This is a basic simple HTML with little bit of JSX, and we'll have this dot state dot task. So we already have a task value in our state for this component, and the value that we'll get from this input element, we'll just basically assign it. We'll have it in this dot state dot task. We'll assign to value. All right, and it'll be a fluid component, and we'll have placeholder text, which will be simply create task. All right, so that's it. I don't think I want to work on it anymore, and what we can do now is we can start switching to our server side. So open up your server, and then here in the server I want to create 3 different folders. The first is middleware, the second folder is models, and the third is routes. We can call it router. Actually, we'll have the entire logic for all our router, all the complete routing logic. Now make sure that you don't make these folders inside each other by mistake, and make sure that they're at the same level inside the server folder, right? So let's close up all the other files of our client, and inside middleware you'll just have a file called middleware.go. So we'll say middleware.go, and inside your models you'll just have a file called models.go, and inside your router you'll just have one file called router.go. So what we can do is we can start with the models, which is usually quite straightforward, right? So the model, we'll say here it belongs to package models, so that we can import it properly easily in our main.go file and all the other files. So yeah, so one thing obviously we need is the main.go file. In our main.go file we want to have package main, and we'll import a couple of packages, and then we'll have our func main. For importing we'll have fmt log and net/http, and we also need the router here. So I think it's github.com/akhil/golang react todo/router. That's how I can access my router. All right, but since we are giving it a name, a package name, we can also just say Golang react todo and /router. Since we're giving it, we'll give it a package name, package router. All right, so we'll try both approaches and see which one works anyhow. So here we'll have our func main. Here we'll say r is equal to router.router. We'll create the router. So the logic for router, like I said, will be in our file router file, and we'll have a function called router which will help us create the router. And here we'll say fmt.println starting the server on port 9000, and we can start the server, listen and serve 9000, r. So this we're doing to basically start the server, and I want to enclose this in log.fatal, so that if there's a fatal error we can handle it. So that basically completes our main.go file. So this file is complete, and now we'll head over to our models file like we were working on it, and here we'll say import go.mongodb.org/mongodriver /bason/primitive. So we'll be storing our tasks in MongoDB, so that's why we need this driver. So we'll create a struct to do list struct, and we'll have ID, task and status. So in case you haven't seen any of my other videos and you don't know what a struct is basically your own data type that you can create in Golang. So so we're creating our own data type called to-do list, and it'll have these three things. It'll have an ID, it'll have a task, it'll have a status, right? ID will be unique mostly. So task will be the name of the task, so that'll clearly be string. Status will be like, you know, it's complete or not complete, so it'll be like a boolean. And ID will be primitive, which is this. Basically we're using the Mongo driver dot object ID. D is capital here. Now Golang is not like JavaScript, it cannot understand JSON on its own. So so it basically needs structs to understand the data types, and it needs something. Struct is like, here in this case, model is like the middle layer. I won't call it the middle layer, but I would call it something that's between your database, which is in JSON, and your Golang, which does not understand JSON, right? So here, when you define a struct, you have to also tell Golang that what that data point is going to look like when the data comes from the database. So it'll be id, comma, omit empty, and then we'll also tell Golang how it looks in BSON mode. So it'll be id, comma, again, omit empty, and for this again it'll be stored as a task in the database, and we'll say omit empty, and this will be stored as status in the database. So we'll say omit empty. Cool. So just as a pointer, these are backticks. This is like the first button in your numbers keyboard on top, just below the function keys. All right, so these are the backticks here. So it's enclosed in backticks, and you have given it the JSON, and for the ID you have to also give it the BSON ID. All right, for MongoDB. So now your Golang project or your program can understand what it needs to work with: ID, task, and status, and the data types like string and boolean that Golang understands. And then now these are the values that the database will have. So Golang now understands like which the database talks which language, and I'm talking which language, and which data types are they exactly. So Golang now understands everything with the help of this struct, and that's why we create these models. All right, and now when we actually work with these models in our routers, we'll marshal and unmarshal between them so that we can understand that data. So I'm just explaining this to you in case you haven't watched any of my other videos. I have more than 100 videos on Golang on my channel, and I've covered this in a lot of detail, basically in so many videos, right? Now we'll start working on our router.go. So let's go to router.go and let's create the routes quickly. So we'll say package router, and we'll import. We need a couple of packages. So firstly, we obviously need our middleware, right? So we'll include our middleware. So for now, we'll just say Golang React Todo /middleware, and then we'll say github.com/gorilla/mux. Mux is the external package that I need here, and then I'll say func router *mux.router. So if you don't know what mux is and how mux router works, I already have a video on my channel. I think it's called Golang and MySQL CRUD series. So that I think uses mux. So go check it out if you don't know what mux is and how it works. And it basically helps you with routing and creating these routes. All right. So we'll create a router. We'll say router is equal to mux.new router. By the way, this is the same router function that we have in our main file. When we're calling router.router, this is exactly that same function. So here router means the package and router means the function, which is this. All right, so we're basically creating the router function now. And then what we want to return from this function is router simply. And we have a couple of routes. All right, so we have our get, post, put, and delete routes. And here we'll say router dot handle func /API/task, comma middleware. So we'll have middleware functions for all of these routes. So the first middleware function that I'll use is get all tasks dot methods. The method here will be get, and we'll get the options. Now the second is router dot handle func slash API slash tasks, comma middleware dot create task. Now for create task, the method is obviously post. Then you have get task by ID. So you'll say router dot handle func slash API slash tasks slash ID, comma. Actually, we don't need to get task by ID. So what we'll do is we'll skip get task by ID. All right, and instead we'll complete the task. So we'll create an API to complete the task, just to make sure that our software is as small as possible. So I think I'll skip get task by ID and I'll just say complete the task. So I'll say put instead of get. So here I'll say methods put, comma options, and here I'll just say middleware dot task complete. All right, so if there's a task and you click on it to complete it, it'll be sent to this function, right? And then if you want to undo the task, in the sense of it's complete but you want to undo it, we will have a separate route for it. We'll say undo task slash ID, comma middleware dot undo the task dot methods put and comma options. And then you can delete task and delete all tasks. So we'll have two more route handlers. So the first is router dot handle func slash API slash delete task slash ID, and the other will be router dot handle func slash API slash delete all tasks. Here we'll have middleware dot delete task. Here we'll have middleware dot delete all tasks. Perfect. And here we just have to give the methods. In this case, it'll be the delete method that we'll be using. Perfect. So this is your entire router file. And what I'll do is I'll keep this video short. In the next video, we'll start tackling our middleware.go file. So do subscribe to this channel so that you come to know when the next video of this series comes out. And I recommend going like building this project day by day. So like let's say one day you just build the routers, one day you just build main.go and the models, just like I'm doing it. When I have every single part of the video, like part 1, 2, 3, 4, do it on separate days. That way you'll just be able to absorb more, and if you're new to Golang, that is, you'll be able to absorb more. You'll be able to understand what's happening and why we're doing the things that we're doing. And you can probably read about these things. If you don't know what Mux router is, you can read about it. You can watch other videos on my channel, and basically that's how you'll learn, right? Doing it on different days. If you do everything together in one day, it might be a lot of information for you to take in. This fifth video, we'll start working on our middleware file now. All right, so let's get started. We'll say package middleware, and then it'll have import, and then it will also have all the other functions that we wanted to handle. For example, in your router you had get all tasks, create task, task complete, undo task, delete task, And this here I think is a typo, so it should be middleware dot delete all tasks. So these are the functions that we need to have. All right. So what we'll do is, I think we'll start creating the outline of these functions. So let's create a function func get all tasks. We'll take in a couple of parameters and we'll have a function definition. Then we'll have a func create task, and same we'll accept some parameters, we'll have a function definition. Then you can see here we have a task complete function. So we'll say func task complete. The next function we'll have is undo task. So func undo task. And then we have our delete task. So func delete task. Then we have delete all tasks. So func delete all tasks. Now generally all these functions will accept W and R. So where W is the HTTP dot response writer and R is a pointer to HTTP dot request. And that basically means that you need your HTTP package here. So you'll say net / HTTP package here as well. And I need the log package to log out some errors. I will also need my OS package, so I'll just keep it here for the time being. And obviously FMT to print out stuff. And now that you know, since from the past video, that we want to work on our from JSON to struct and struct to JSON, we want to do conversions, marshalling and unmarshalling, we'll use encoding / JSON. Then we also need the context package, and we need obviously our Gorilla Mux. So we'll say github.com/gorilla/mux. All right. So the first thing that you'll do is you will create a MongoDB collection. So we'll say var collection *mongo.collection. Middleware, all the functions in the middleware are responsible for talking to your database. All right, so that means you need a couple of Mongo drivers as well. So the ones that we need are go.mongodb.org/mongodriver/bson. We need go.mongodb.org/mongodriver/bson/primitive. go.mongodb.org/mongodriver/mongo. go.mongodb.org/mongodriver/mongo/options. So these are the ones that you need. And here we'll also have an environment file, the .env file. So let's create a .env file here. So new file .env. Since you want to work with a database, we need some environment variables. First one we need is db URI. So any Mongo database URI starts with MongoDB. So in my case it's localhost 27017. You can use an external fully managed MongoDB, or you can be running it on your local host like I am. Doesn't matter. You can just give the MongoDB URL here, and then we'll have our DB name. So for now we'll just keep it test, and the collection name will be to-do list. So now we have our environment file fixed. To work with the environment file, we need a package. So here's the spelling, just make sure you get it right. So the package that we need is github.com/joho/go.env, which helps us to get the environment variables from the .env file. So this means that we'll have a initialization function, and we'll have a function called load the environment and create db instance. So these two functions are called directly at the beginning. And now let's work on our load the environment function, which just uses the go.environment package that we just imported, calls the load function, and loads the .env file. And if there's an error, we can catch it like this. And then now let's handle the error. So we'll say if error not equal to nil means if the error is there, we'll say log.fatal error loading the .env file. And then we'll have our create db instance function, which will be quite long. Right now we'll work on the create db instance function. So let's say func create db instance, and here we'll have our connection string, where we'll use our OS package to get the environment variable for db URI. As you can see, we have already defined it here, db URI. This is basically what we're getting out here. And then we have our db name is equal to os.get environment db name, which is test basically. All right. And then you have your collection name. For collection name, we'll say the same thing, os.get environment for db collection name. Make sure you write the exact same words here like this, compared with your .env file. And then we'll have our client options, options.client dot apply URI connection string. And then we'll use our mongo.connect function to connect to the database. So we'll say mongo.connect. Sorry, there's a triple N, it's double N. So context.todo, comma, client options. And we'll capture this in client, comma, error. So if error not equal to nil, we log out the fatal error. And using the client, we can ping and check if everything is all right. So it's context.todo, comma, nil, and we'll capture the error. So again, if there is an error, so we'll say if error not equal to nil. Log out the fatal error. And if everything has gone well, we'll say fmt dot println connected to MongoDB. Perfect. And then we'll say client dot database db name dot collection name. So we'll capture this in basically a variable called collection. So from the database we'll get the collection and we'll capture that in a variable called collection. And here we'll say fmt dot println collection instance. Sorry, this is all under inside double inverted comma, so we'll say collection instance created. For get all tasks, we're going to set our header first. So we'll say w dot header dot set. So it's context type, comma, application slash x www form URL encoded w dot header dot set. This is for the course error, so we'll say access control allow origin, so that we don't get a course error, right? So we'll say star, that means allow origin from everywhere. And we'll call a function called get all tasks, and we'll capture that in a variable called payload. Then we'll encode the payload. We'll say JSON by using the JSON package dot new encoder for the response dot encode payload. All right, so whatever we get in the payload, we're going to encode it into JSON and send it to the front end. I hope that makes sense. Now the next function that we can work on is create task function. So we'll come here and we'll say w http dot response writer comma r star http dot request. And here so this function is quite long, so I'm thinking of keeping this all these videos short, so that you know, you can, if you want, if one of you is learning or some of you are learning you know, Golang newly, so you'll be able to basically divide the project into few days and then learn them on a day-by-day basis. So if you want to just tackle the create DB instance function and get all task function in this video on this particular day, then that's all right. And then on the next day you should tackle the create task function and task complete function, you know, stuff like that. Basically, don't try to do everything on one day, since this is going to be a long file, right, the middleware. So it's better to divide these functions into different days if you're new to Golang and if you're still learning. So in this video we're going to create the create task and the task complete functions. For the task complete functions, we'll have to accept w comma r, and w is of type http.responseWriter and r is http.request. Sorry. So for task complete, for create task, what we'll do is we'll say w dot header dot set. First we'll set the context type, then we'll set the access control, and allow origin. Then we'll set allow methods, access control, allow methods, and then we'll have our headers. So we'll say access control allow headers. So context type in our case will be application slash form URL encoded. We want to allow origin of requests from anywhere, so we'll use star. This request, the create task, will be a post request, so we'll say post method, use the post method here. And allow headers, so we'll use content type for allow headers. And then we'll say where task models dot to do list. So for models, in models you have to do list. That's what you're accessing here. And you're saying that create something called as task, which is a variable which will be of type to do list, which is your own struct that you have defined here. Then you'll say JSON dot new decoder r dot body. So you'll send the task as a request, as a post request to this function, and you will use the new decoder function from the JSON package to decode whatever JSON is there in r dot body. We'll decode it to task. So we'll use task to decode it. So basically we'll get all the data which was in JSON and BSON in this format, which we require to be used with Golang. And then we can say insert one task, insert the task, and we'll say JSON dot new encoder w dot encode task. Okay, so we'll encode it back again. Now we need to work with task complete function, which is of put method. You can copy and paste all of this and just change this to put, but if you're not somebody who's experienced with Golang, I would suggest don't copy and paste, type along with me. I'm going to type everything from scratch, so that the more you type in Golang, the more used to you get with the syntax, and the better and faster you learn. All right, so we'll say header dot set context type, sorry, and then we'll say w dot header dot set access control allow origin w dot header dot set access control allow methods dot header dot set access control allow headers. Here we'll say application slash x w dot slash dot dash form dash URL encoded. It's the same thing as before. Here again we'll not put any restrictions. We'll say that request can originate from anywhere. We'll use the put method. Here we'll use content type. All right. And then we'll say mux dot vars r. So we're using the mux package to access the parameters, and we're capturing that in a variable called params because we need the ID which will be passed as a params to this function. And here we'll say task complete params ID. So from the parents we'll just access the ID and we'll pass it to a function called task complete. And then we'll say json dot new encoder w dot encode params ID. All right. So this means that we'll have a function called task complete. This function. So let's just create the outline for that function at least. Task complete, which takes a task and has a function definition. All right. And here we had our get all tasks function, and here there's another function that's being called get all tasks. So why not define that function as well? So we'll say func get all tasks, and we'll have some function definition. So now we have to work on all these functions like undo task, delete all tasks, and these two functions as well. And we've reached quite far. We have completed our get all tasks and create task and task complete, and as well as create DB instance and load the environment functions. So these are the ones that are remaining now. And what I'll do is I'll keep this video short so that you get enough time between each of these videos so that you can practice, and then if you have any issues still here, understanding any issues, you can let me know. So I'm trying to keep this as beginner friendly as possible, trying to explain every single line. All right. So in this video we'll work on our undo task, delete all tasks function. So let's get started. For the undo task we'll have w and r, and here we'll use http dot response writer, and for r it'll be a pointer to http dot request. And similarly for delete task also, let's do the same. We'll have w, which will be a http dot response writer, and r, which will be a pointer to http dot request. Similarly for delete all tasks, you'll have the same w comma r, http dot response writer, http dot request. So for your undo task, you'll have w dot header dot set, and we'll set content type, and then we'll set, actually for the other ones as well we can make it content type instead of context. So set access control allow origin, and we'll have methods and then headers. So we'll say w dot header dot set access control allow methods, w dot header dot set access control allow headers. What I'll do is I'll take this entire thing, copy and paste here, and here let's start changing these values. So here we'll say application /x www-form URL encoded application /x www-form URL encoded. Okay, here you want this to be star. To undo task, you're obviously updating the task, so it's put method, and here we're saying content type in the header. Here again we'll say star using the delete method, and header as always is content type. For delete all tasks, we'll have the first two only. So in the undo task, to undo a task we obviously need the ID, right? So which ID, task with which ID do you want to undo or update? So here we'll do the same thing as we did here for task complete. So we'll say mux.vars. In the request, which is R, you will have some variables, and I want those to be in parameters so that I can access the parameters. So I'll have a function called undo task, and we'll have params, and we need access to the ID. So here we'll say json.new encoder w dot encode params ID. Now with the delete task, to delete a particular task, you'll obviously have to do the same thing. You'll have to say params mux.vars ID, R, and you'll say delete one task params ID. So that means we need two more new functions, undo task and delete one task. Alright, and with delete all tasks, we'll have count is equal to delete all tasks. We just want to return the count, that is it. And here we'll say json.new encoder dot encode count. Now there are three more functions that I see. One is delete one task, one is delete all tasks. Then we have undo task. So actually 4 functions, and I see one more which is insert one task. So along with get all tasks and task complete, we'll have insert one task, func insert one task, which will take some parameters and have a function definition. Then, so this was for the create task function, it was calling the insert one task function. Then we'll have our undo task function. So for undo task, you will have func undo task, and for delete one task also you'll have another function. So you'll say func delete one task, and then you'll say for this function also we'll have to define func, or sorry, out here you'll say func delete all tasks. So we've reached till here where we have worked on quite a few functions, and we have quite a few more functions to go. So we have get all tasks, task complete, insert one task, undo task, delete one task, and delete all tasks. All these functions to be completed. So in our router.go, I saw one small mistake. The delete all tasks has to be capital D, and in our middleware we'll again set it here to capital D, and then the function that it's going to call, the function that talks to the database, that has a small d, which is completely fine with us, right? And so here you're noticing a pattern here. There are some functions like, let's say, get all tasks and create task and task complete. All these functions have capital C, capital T, like that, and the function that they're calling inside this have small letters. For example, get all tasks. So your get all task function is calling get all tasks, and this one has a small g in the beginning, right? So that's how we're differentiating between these functions. Now let's in this video we'll try to complete our get all task functions. Let's do that. Now I'll have to limit these videos to 10 minutes each. I can't go above 10 minutes because I have some calls that I have to take after this. So I'm really sorry, but that's 10 minutes is the max I can do for the next few days, and then we'll again switch back to the longer format 30-40 minutes videos. And if you've not seen the Golang authorization video, I request you to go and check it out, because that's a huge video series, and all of the videos are quite big. So you learn a lot basically in that series. All right, and here we'll say collection.find. So collection.find is basically our MongoDB kind of a syntax, which is going to basically find something in the collection. And here we'll say context.background, JSON.d. So it's going to, when you send something empty here, it's an empty query, it's going to basically return all of the tasks it has in that collection, right? Whatever comes here, you'll catch it in a variable called cursor, and then you'll also have a provision for error checking, and we'll check for the error. So we'll say if error not equal to nil, we log out the fatal error, and then we'll define a variable called results. So we'll say var results of type primitive.m, and in this cursor that we have received, so we'll loop over that. So we'll say for cursor.next context.background, and inside the loop we'll define a variable called result, which is of type bson.m, and we'll say cursor.decode result. So I'm sure if you've been following my videos, you already know by now what this decode function does. Right? It's whatever we get, it's going to decode it in the format of result. And in our case, the result is this that we've already defined here, which is bson.m. And we're going to capture this in a variable called e. So we'll check if e is not equal to nil, and we're going to basically log out e, which is going to be the error. So this basically returns the error for us. And we want to return this results, which is a slice of primitive m, and this results contains every single result, which is of type bson.m. And here for results, we're going to say append results comma result. What it's going to do is basically it's going to take the results slice, and it's going to one by one append result. Whatever result you get here is going to append that one by one here to the results slice, and this whole slice is what you return from here, right? So you basically call the collection.find function, and you pass an empty query to that, so that, which basically in MongoDB terms it means that you want everything that's stored in the database. You're not sending any particular query. You're not saying name is equal to this or ID is equal to this, right? Or you're not using and or those kind of queries. You're just saying when you send an empty query to MongoDB find function, it gives you everything that it has in that collection. So in our collection, we'll get all the tasks back. So one by one, it'll go through those tasks, and then it'll decode them because MongoDB stores JSON, right? And it's going to append them. And with JSON, the thing is Golang cannot work directly with JSON. So that's why we want to decode it first, the result that we get, and then we want to append it. Now to append it, obviously the format shouldn't be JSON, and only then you can append it using Golang, and that's why you're appending it, right? So you decode it and then you append it to a slice, and you return the slice from this function. All right. Now here you'll have to do a couple of things. So you'll say cursor.error, and just catching the error here. So we'll say if error not equal to nil, log.fatal error. Then you'll just close it by saying context.background and return results from this function, which is what you want, right? So I hope you know by now what get all tasks does basically. Now let's work on the task complete function as well, since we have some time. So task complete function takes in a task, right? And it let's create an ID for this task. So we'll say primitive dot object ID from hex task. Let's create a filter criteria. So we'll say bson dot m. What you're doing here is that that particular task, you got the ID for that task, and that ID is what you're going to pass as a filter into the database, so that you get the task of that ID, and that's how you'll operate upon it by saying that by changing the status to true. Alright, so that's all we're doing. So here we'll say update is equal to bson.m $set bson.m status true, and we'll say collection dot update one. So update one is a MongoDB function which requires you to find something, and then as in this is the criteria that helps you to find the record, and this is the criteria that helps you to set the new value. So you'll say $set and status is equal to true for this ID. That's what's happening here. So in this update one function, you're passing the filter and update. So we'll say filter comma update query, and whatever you get back from here, you'll just store it in result, and it might also return an error, and you'll obviously check for the error. So if error not equal to nil, you'll say log.fatal error, and here you'll print out the modified count. So you'll say fmp.println modified count or result dot modified count. So in this video we were able to finish two important functions here, get all tasks and task complete. Now we need to work on, in the next video we need to work on insert one task, undo task, delete one task, and delete all tasks, and that will kind of complete our entire backend, which is quite simple as you've noticed. And then we'll start working on our front end. So before we start working on our front end this time, we'll actually try running our server code, so that just to see everything is working fine and there's no error there for us to handle. We are now left with these four functions, and then we'll be almost complete with our server side code, and then we'll test it, and then we'll figure out those issues, right? So in this video, my aim is to finish all these four functions. So let's start with insert one task. So here we'll say collection. Actually, before that, we'll have to define what we're going to receive. So the thing that we're receiving in insert one task is a task of type models.to-do list. So in your models, you've already defined a struct called to-do list, and this is the structure of the data that you're expecting here in this function. And so inserting something into MongoDB is quite straightforward. So you'll just say collection.insert one, and give it some context. And here you'll just pass the task data that you've just received in this function, which is inside this variable called task. Now the standard practice, you'll capture this in a variable called insert result, and you'll also capture the error. So if error is not equal to nil, you will log out the fatal error. Otherwise, you'll print out inserted a single record, and you'll print out the ID. So the ID will be inside insert result dot inserted ID with D is capital. So this is how you'll get access to the inserted ID, and this is what you want to print out to the console. Now let's work on our undo task. Undo task basically is when somebody has completed that task and now they want to undo it. So that's when you'll use this function. So it's going to be straightforward. It's going to accept, just like task complete, it's going to be very similar to task complete. Here you'll say task string. Just like task complete, you'll accept task, which is string here. And again, you'll get the ID. So you'll say object ID from hex task. And we'll get that in ID. Now again, you'll create the filter and update. Just like this, we'll create filter and update. Right, so I can either copy and paste this thing, the whole thing, and then just all we have to change is basically this from true to false, but I'm going to type it out. The reason why I type out stuff and not just copy and paste is because if somebody who is new to Golang and they're watching my video, I want them to go through every single line on their own. I want them to type it out. It's because this is the only way to build memory. This is the only way to get used to the syntax. Otherwise, you'll get into a lot of trouble when you have to actually go for a real interview where they take you on a video call and they ask you to write actual code for a real problem, right? You'll get into a lot of trouble in those kind of rounds. So always type out everything and build memory. So you'll create the filter and you'll create the update part, which is bson.m and $set bson.m status is false. And all you have to do now is collection.update1 context.background filter update. So we'll pass those two things inside the function and we'll capture it in a variable called result, and we'll also capture the error. Perfect. Now we'll check for the error, so we'll say if error not equal to nil, log.fatal error, and we'll again print out the modified count. So we'll say fmt.print ln modified count, result.modified count. So we have done these two functions in this video till now, insert one task and undo task, and now we'll work on delete one task and then delete all tasks. So let's again start with task as string, and then the same stuff, primitive dot object id from hex task. Then you'll create the filter again here as well, so bson.m. So here basically you're finding the task with this ID, and that's the one that we want to delete. Okay, and all we have to say is collection.delete1, which is a MongoDB function, and you'll just pass your context.background, filter, and whatever is returned here, you'll capture that in a variable called d, and also you'll capture the error. And here you'll say if error not equal to nil, log.fatal error, and just print out the count of the deleted elements. So here we'll say fmt.print ln deleted document, d dot deleted count. Okay, so now the last function, delete all tasks. This just returns a count, so we'll say int64 here, and so in MongoDB, to delete a lot of records together, you have to use this function called delete many. So that's what we'll use. So we'll say collection dot delete many context dot background, bson.d. I've already explained to you what this means. This is basically saying that we are passing an empty query. That means we want to delete all of the records in the database. Okay, and here we'll pass nil, so we'll capture that d, where d basically has the count, of deleted elements, and here we'll handle the error. We'll say if error not equal to nil, log dot fatal error, and then we'll print out the count. So fmt dot println deleted document dot deleted count, and we return the count of the deleted values from this function, and that's what N64 is all about. Now we've completed all the functions here, but I'm expecting a lot of errors. So let's check out those errors. Let's head over to our terminal and try running this code. I'll just increase the size of the font so that you can see it clearly, and here let's say cd. I'll just head over to the place in my project, and now here we'll just try running inside the server, obviously, or no, actually here itself. So we can try running main.go, and now your main.go, firstly, I think the problem is that it needs to be inside server firstly. So we'll move it inside the server file. Alright, and now let's try running it. So we'll have to go inside server, and okay, so it's saying that Golang direct router is not in Go root. Okay, makes sense. So it's having problem accessing this. So we'll have to give it the name of the entire project. So we'll have to say github.com/akhil/, because this project that I've created is not in my Go root folder. So that's why it's having problem basically accessing this. So I'll have to give it an absolute root instead of having to give it a relative root. Here I'll say github.com/akhil/. I think these are the only two places where I had to import the other files from a project. So I can let's try running it again, and here we're getting a lot of errors again. So I'm slightly running out of time. I hope you've done these fixes with me, these two fixes at least, and all these other issues, and I'm sure even after we fix them, we'll have many more issues, but I'll be tackling them in the next video. Now the reason why I am so chill about creating the entire code in one go and then sorting out all the issues later on is because Golang is super sorted, in the sense it'll tell you the exact line, exact issue. You don't have to apply a lot of brains. It does, like for JavaScript you have to be a genius to solve errors, I agree, and that's why whenever I'm writing code, I have a lot of VS Code plugins installed, and I'm always watching with a hawk's eye while writing code. If there's an error, I'll be in trouble. But with Golang that's not the case. I mean, you don't get into a lot of trouble. So these issues I'll show you, we'll just solve them in a couple of minutes. So here in your to-do list file, you also want to have your onChange function, right? So I'll have an onChange. We'll use it in a while, but for now I'm just creating it. So whenever there's a change, so we want to set the state. So I know it won't make sense right now to you and as to why I'm creating this function, but just wait for a while and everything will make sense. So here we'll say event.target.name, and we'll have event.target.value. So this is my onChange function. So this was the only thing that was remaining here, and now we'll come back again to our render function and we'll start working on our render function, right? So in our render function we had created this placeholder form, but inside the form here we'll create some JSX, and it'll be basically our button. So we'll say button create task, and here we'll have our div So right now I'm just keeping it commented out. We'll do something here, don't worry. So here in our div, we'll have a class name, which is row. And a card. So we'll say card.group, and I'm going to map out this dot state dot items. All right. So we're basically just showing a form which will have a type, a name, and it'll have an onChange property, and this onChange function I've already defined right now with you, and it'll have a value. So the value will be the state of dot task, right? That's the value that will be passed. And it'll have a placeholder called create task, and the form is closed. And then we'll have a row which will have card groups, which will basically show all the other tasks to us, right? So this dot state dot items have been mapped out here. Now comes the most important part. All right, now we'll have to create functions for on submit out here. So we'll have an on submit function. Then we'll have a get task function to show the list of all the tasks. Okay. Then we'll have our update task function. And our undo task and delete task. Sorry. Okay. And that's about it. So these are all the functionalities that we require for a to-do list to start working properly. So now let's work on the get task function, because that's the easiest, obviously. So for get task function, we'll have an arrow function, and here we'll use the Axios library, and we'll use our endpoint, which we've already defined here. Endpoint is localhost 9000. So we'll call that endpoint. So we'll say plus/API/task, which is the exact route that we want to hit. And after hitting it, we'll say .10. The response that we get, we'll do something with that. So if the response that we have received, the data of that exists, there is some data, then we'll set our state right. And now we want to set our items, right? The items that we're going to map here, which are basically the tasks, the initial tasks. So you will say response.data dot map out each of the items, and color will be equal to yellow. So I'm going to define style here itself. We'll have a word wrap. And we'll also check the status of the items. So if item.status exists, there is a status. Then color is equal to green. Style. So you can also check if the status is true or false, right? So style, we'll have text, decoration, line through. Okay, and we're going to return something from here, right? So we'll have return. We'll have a card and a key. So we're now defining the internals of the card, as in how the things need to be mapped out. So we're passing the item ID, the color, and we'll have a class name, which we'll use later on for some styling. And we'll close this tag. Inside this, we'll have some content in the card. So we'll say card.content, card.header, text align is equal to left. div style create a div here and just map out item.task. Right, so you're just going to have each card, and each card will have a particular color, you know, based on the status, and you'll have a style also, and you'll have an ID, right? And so we want it to be left aligned, and we want the style to be you know, put onto it. Style, let's say if the task is completed, then we want a line through, right? We want it to be completed, so that's why we want to apply the style here. And the item task will be displayed there, right? So far everything is, I think, very straightforward. There is no complication here. If you're you know, finding it difficult to follow along, do comment in the like the comments below, and I'll try and help you out. So here I want an icon to be present. The name will be check circle, color will be blue, and it'll have an on click this dot update task. So update task function we have to create, right? So check circle is basically you want to tell that the task is complete or not, right? So that check circle will be blue in color, and then you want to update the task if this check circle is clicked on. And I don't need to have another icon like this. I can just close this right here. All right, and I'll have a span here, padding right 10, and I want to write here undo, right? So if the task is completed, you can undo it as well, and then it'll become a task that's not completed. And here we'll have an icon, they'll have a name, delete, color will be red to delete the task. And if you click on this, you want the item to be deleted, so you'll call the delete task function with the item ID, the ID of the item, so that it can call the relevant function in the backend. So that's your icon, and then you'll have a delete padding right is 10. If you ever get confused, just look at the project demo that I'd shown you in the beginning of the video. Then everything will make a lot more sense, right? If you ever get confused. So here's the delete text for the button, and now you just ensure that you have closed all the tags correctly. Card.meta, card.content, card, and let's put semicolons here, comma here, and put a semicolon here, and here you can have an else statement. This dot set state items, comma, put a semicolon here, put a semicolon here as well, here as well. Now your function is complete, and now we're just left with 3 different functions: update task, undo task, and delete task, right? So in our get task, we have seen how all those functions are getting called, and now all we have to do is just define these 3 functions quickly. So let me work on update task, which is quite straightforward. You pass an ID to it. As you can see here in your update task, you pass the item ID, right? So that's the ID that I'm catching out here, and I'll do something with that ID. So I'll say Axios dot put. So you already know that for updating something you have to call the put method, right? So, and we already have the endpoint of the backend slash API slash task plus ID is what you'll need, plus ID, because for that particular ID of item you want to update that item, right? Which will be either complete or undo. So for headers you'll say content type application slash www dash form dash URL and coded, comma, put a comma here, and here you'll say dot then. After calling this function you will receive a response. Right now you want to do something with that response, so you'll say, you're just consoling it out, so you'll say console.log the response, and you'll call the method this.task get task. So now what this.get task, after you have updated the task, what this does is it calls all the tasks from the database, this complete function, right? So every time you update something it calls the this.get task again, so that all the tasks with the latest statuses are shown there, as in if they're complete or they're not complete, you know, whatever. So that's why it's important to call this function after updating your task. Now undo task, you know why it's called, because if the task was completed and you want to undo it and you want to make it a regular task to be completed again, so you'll undo it and then it'll become a regular task which won't be the status of which won't be completed. So Axios.put, you already have the endpoint, and the API is undo task, and you will have the ID for it as well. Here you'll set the headers. I think I'll bring it to the next line, put a comma here. So the headers are content type application slash x dot form dash URL and coded, comma here, and you'll have dot then, and response will be, so you'll console out the response just to be sure. And again after this you'll call the get task function. So whenever you update something or you undo a task, you will call the get task function to make sure that all the latest tasks with the latest statuses are shown again to the user, so that he feels like everything is getting refreshed again. Now delete task function is again very simple. Only after I fix my arrow function. Yeah, so for delete task you'll have Axios.delete, and you'll have your endpoint plus API slash delete task plus ID, comma, headers. So for the headers you'll have content type application slash x www dash form dash URL and coded. Okay, and after you call this function you want to do something with the response. Which will be basically console.log. You'll log out the response first, and then you will again call the get task function, so that after this task is deleted, this doesn't keep showing up in the list. All right, so the user sees the updated what do you call it, the user sees the updated task list. So with this I think we have kind of done all of the functions. Let me take a deeper look. Component red mount is there, on change is there, on submit is there. Yeah, on submit is remaining. Yes, so that's a big function. Not as big as get task, but it's still quite substantial function. So let's work on our on submit function, which is the last function. After which we'll just change a little bit CSS, and then we're ready to start testing our project. So here we'll have let task is equal to this dot state, and if task is there. So on submit, if you're not if you've not figured it out yet, on submit is basically create task, right? So you have get task, you have create task, you have update, undo, delete, right? So on submit, when you fill the form, you are just basically creating a task in the backend. So the create task API will be called. All right. So post, and for post we have our endpoint plus slash API slash task. Post method, as you already might know, is for sending something to the backend, like a post request, which ends up creating your task. So you've sent your task, you've sent your headers with the post request. Here you'll have content type, application will be x dash www-vom dash URL and coded, comma. All right, so you'll press enter here, put a comma. Okay, so after this bracket, right, the one that's the round bracket, firstly just put a semicolon here, and after this round bracket, what you'll do is you'll say dot then, and similarly how we've been doing with all the other functions, we want the promise resolved, and then this we want to do something with the response after the API has been called. So here's how we're going to do it, right? And here we'll call get task function, and we'll also have to set the state. So we'll set the state. Task becomes empty because the form has been filled, right? We don't want the old task to be lingering around in our state, and we'll console out the response. You can put a semicolon here, and formatting needs to be sorted out. Let me take this here, and bring this here. For the formatting purists amongst us, you know, I've sorted out the function now. So this completes our to-do-list.js file. I need to do a little bit of work here in the app.js, because this is the standard app.js that works on the logo of React, which you know, we're not doing that here. So what I'll do is I'll just remove this completely, and I'll add some really basic CSS, completely optional. If you want to do it, you can do it. And I'm sure you're much better than me at CSS, so you'll be able to add even better CSS. So I'm just adding some basic stuff so that it doesn't look really bad, right? Based on my understanding of CSS, which is very low. Background color is. You can completely skip this part if you're getting bored, as in many people, you know, they don't like working on CSS because they think, like, you're here to learn React and Golang, so many people don't appreciate learning CSS. But you know, sometimes, but some people want to learn the whole full stack, so they're fine doing this. So whatever your taste is, you can either skip it, or you can, you know, make the CSS even better than what I'm doing. So you'll have text align at the header, which will be at the center always, and at the row, which is row, as you already know, I've given it the class to the to those individual tasks. That's the row for me. So for that, I'll have a padding bottom of 50 pixels. So let's do a complete check of the entire project, and then what we'll do is we'll try and run the project. So we have kind of completed all the functions in the front end and back end, and now the only work that's remaining is testing the project and then finding out errors and fixing them. And since I'm running slightly short on time, in the next video we'll have to tackle that part. So we are complete with all the functions right now, and I have tested the code and I've found some issues in the front end as well as the back end. So first let's figure out and solve all the front end issues. Okay, now to save your time, I'm not going to test it here and show you the issues, but I'll directly show you the issues and how to fix them. All right, the first issue that you'll face is it'll say that React, it's not able to import React. Yeah, that's because the R is capital, so it should be small, right? So if you've built the program along with me and you run npm start, the first issue that you'll get will be that it's not able to find React. It's not able to import React, right? That's the reason is because R is small, not capital R, right? That'll be an issue. Similarly, then once you solve that issue, you'll get an issue saying that component did mount should actually be component did mount with a small c. Once you solve that issue, you'll get an error out here which will say that target, it doesn't understand what this target is because this is a spelling mistake. It should have been target. And you'll get an issue here as well because this should have been small s with set state. Everything else is up to the mark. There you won't find any other issues in the entire program. And after that also the program won't work because we have used semantic UI and we have used Axios, but we have not installed them. So what you want to do right now is you will go to your package.json file, and if you already have a package log.json file, I suggest you delete it first. And your package.json file, you will come here and you will add semantic UI React, and you will add this version. You'll add a caret first, caret characters, which is shift and 6 on your keyboard, and here you'll say 0.88.2. now this is, you could use any other version, but this is the version I've tested it with, and it works pretty fine with this version, right? And you have to close this bracket, this double inverted commas here as well. Now if you did create React app, then you probably got React 17 version and React DOM 17 version, right? Now I tested with the 17 version. It did give me a few issues. So I would suggest you downgrade it to 16.14.0. So basically just manually write 16.14.0, which is just the version before version 17. So it won't be giving you any issues with semantic UI. Now semantic UI is a different npm library. Semantic UI React is the right UI library for us. All right, so just make sure this is the one that you have installed. All right, and then you have to get Axios. The Axios version that you need is 0.21.1. You could be using any other version, but I'm just telling you this particular program is stable with these particular versions of the libraries, right? So I don't have a package.json file, a package log.json file, and I'm going to delete my node modules. All right, so I suggest you do the same with me. And then hopefully everything is up to the date, except for one little thing, right? So if you go to your index.html in your public folder, here you need to import semantic UI, right? So let me find that link for semantic UI. You can find it on the internet, or you can slowly type it along with me if you want. I'll actually type it along, because if you're not able to find this link, you're still you won't be left scrambling, right? If you find it from the internet, amazing. But if you don't find it from the internet, type it along with me. Style sheet. All right, and href//cdn.js deliver, where v doesn't have, after v there's no r, .net. So here you'll write .net/npm/semantic-ui @2.4.2/district dist slash semantic dot min dot css. All right. So once you have this link, hopefully everything will work. Just save your file, and now you have to let me start a new terminal actually, and you have to just npm install the changes that we made in our package.json file. We need to install those changes in the project, and so that package.log.json file is created for us, and also the node modules are imported for us, right? So I'll head over to the place in my laptop where I keep this project. It's Golang React Todo, and I'll just say npm install. So it'll take a while, and I'll pause this video right now and I'll come back once this is done. You can do the same. So in a new terminal, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to run the server side code, so that we can find the issues there as well. So in my server, I'll say go run main.go. So here are all the issues that I have. All right, most of them are around importing this models module. So firstly, what you would want to do is you'd want to run go mod tidy. So you'll say go mod tidy. Secondly, we'd want to say github.com/akhil/ Golang React Todo / models, and then when you run it again, we're getting some more errors. All right, now one issue that I can quickly find and sort out is that on line 151, insert one should have been insert one, right? With capital I. So let's go to line 151 quickly, and this should have been capital I. So that's sorted. Now let's try running it again. So at least that one issue is gone, right? On line 117, cannot use context.background. So let's go to line 117. So let's quickly find this issue on line 117. Yep, this needs to have brackets, and line 38. So instead of URL, it should be URI. And now let's run it again. Add loading the .env file. So this file is not getting loaded here. So let's see why that is an issue. So that is a simple issue because env needs to be inside the server folder. Move. And now let's see what happens. I'm expecting many more errors. Oh, it started. Okay, so everything works perfectly fine on the server. And if you look at our front end, it's completely done. It has what do you call it, installed. Npm install has happened, and here you can see the package.log.json file and node modules file. So now you can run the program and everything will work perfectly fine, right? So by running the program, I've already shown you in the beginning of the video, but if you still want to see it, if you want to run it along with me, you can do that. So you do npm start and the server is running. So I was just also seeing that this particular project on my channel, sitemap call, even that I have to create the 6th part. So I just remembered. So it's been I've not worked on this series since quite some time, so I'll have to complete that as well. So as you can see, everything is working perfectly fine. You can test it, you can work on it, whatever. So thank you for working on the project with me and watching this series, and do subscribe to the channel so that you'll keep coming to work on such awesome projects. And thank you, and see you in the next episode.